Taming the High Cost of College, Ep020.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello, and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge, and today we have an interview with Elizabeth Benedict. She is the owner of a company called Don't Sweat the Essay, and she's going to talk to us today about essay writing. And that's a major stumbling block for a lot of students is, how do I write an essay? How do I get started? So she's going to help us understand the essay writing process and get into the nuts and bolts of how parents and students can work together to get the essay portion of college applications done. And then on Brad Recommends, I'm going to talk about building a team. Somebody like Elizabeth could be on your team, someone that helps you write the essay, but there's other team members in the financial world and other areas where you can actually build a team of experts or school counselors or whoever it might be in order to help you get through the college process between you and your family and your student. Before we jump into that, as always, notes for this episode are available at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/20, because this is episode 20. You can go there and get links to all the stuff that we talked about, more information on the guests. And of course, that works for all the other episodes as well. If you wanted to get to episode 16, you would go to tamingthehighcostofcollege/16. And then finally, I just wanted to spend a minute to talk a little bit about this podcast. Some of you may be listening to this podcast directly on our website or somebody else's website where you're actually just listening to this while you're at a computer. And that's fine. That's great. That's the way that a lot of people can and do listen. But just so you're aware that because this is a podcast, there are ways to get this podcast into a iPod, as an example, where you can take it with you. Or the newest technologies now is to get it into your phone. So you can download podcasts into your phone, and then you can use your phone to play the podcast either through some form of headphone or earbud, or often you can also Bluetooth link your phone with your car, and you can listen while you're driving. So there's a lot of people that use podcasts as entertainment while they're doing housework or driving or on their daily workout or walk or jog. So it's a great way for you to learn instead of the typical radio, which is what most people might be using. And you can listen, as you want. You can pause it, and you have complete control. Now, if you actually subscribe to the podcast, then you can set it up where the podcast will actually download as it becomes available to your phone or to your iTunes account on your computer, so that you don't have to go back to the website and see if there's anything new. Anytime there's something new, it automatically gets pushed to your phone or pushed to your computer or pushed to your iPad or iPod. So those are some things that you can just be aware of if you want to learn how to do that. There's certainly ways you can get online and Google it. Or if you need additional help, often your student is more than capable of helping you set up an app on your phone or whatever it might be. So ask them for help on getting it all set up. All right, well, let's jump into the interview with Elizabeth. She has a lot of great information about essay writing. All right, today I have an interview with Elizabeth Benedict, and she has a consulting firm where she helps people with essay writing, and her website and business name is Don't Sweat the Essay. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So why don't you start with a little bit about how you came to be involved with the essay writing portion of college and what you've seen so far.
Okay. Well, I am a novelist. I've written 5 novels. I've written a book about writing fiction, and I've edited 3 anthologies of personal essays by some very famous writers that I conceived of the essays and then I commissioned them. So I've been teaching writing at major universities for 25 years, and I write a lot of journalism, and I've done just about everything that writers do. And about 5 years ago, a friend whose son was in high school shared with me the possibility that I might be able to help kids with college essays. And at the time I was teaching university students, and I was immediately entranced by this idea because I love working with young people. I basically spent my life working on writing with young people. And by young people, I mean college students and graduate students, but there's a lot of later high school students, of course, are almost in college. And I had been teaching creative writing for 25 years, and I sort of thought it might be a time for a break. And I thought it was a really intriguing idea. So it started out as just an idea a friend passed on to me. And since I've been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years, I've really come to love what I do. I love working with the students. I love how goal-oriented the writing projects are. They're very finite. They're very focused. They have a real goal in mind, which is to help this student become a better writer, write a great essay, and get into college. It's not a sort of open-ended, am I a good writer? Should I go to get an MFA in writing? Do you like my short story? It's very different from that. It's very, very practical. I think the students really get a lot out of the kind of focused attention on every sentence that we do.
Okay.
Because I don't think they have a lot of that experience in their own schools. And I sometimes feel like I'm the first person who's ever sat down with them and showed them how to write.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. I know I've not had a lot of formal training in writing, and I've gotten all the way through college. So I think writing is a lost art for a lot of people. So, most people have heard of the college essay, so to speak, but let's define that a little bit. Is there, what is the college essay and where does it show up and what are the rules about it?
Well, unfortunately, the college essay is now not just one essay, but many college essays. But so I think a few years ago, there was only principally one essay. But in recent years, this is what's happened. The Common Application Organization made it very easy for kids to apply to many, many schools. And so suddenly, kids who might have only applied to 3 or 4 schools back in the day are now applying to 8, 10, 12, 15 schools. And suddenly these schools are deluged with applications because you can just press a button and say send. Once that started to happen, they realized that they had to find ways to differentiate between students who may all have had the same grades and the same scores. Even if they have top grades and top scores, it's still hard to differentiate even at the highest levels. And so they started introducing these essays that would elicit lots of information from students so that they could make distinctions between them. And that's, I think, the origins of why there isn't just one essay anymore. But there is, when we talk about the college essay and the one that everybody gets nervous about, they generally are talking about the Common Application essay, which has to be between 250 and 650 words. And that's the only essay that you need to write nowadays when you fill out the Common Application. And every school on the Common App, now there are about 550 of them, every school will see that essay, this 650-word essay. And many schools may have their own what's called supplementary essays, which are also on the Common Application in another section. But the one that everybody gets so nervous about, that, the kind of infamous college essay, that's the Common App essay. There are all these supplementary essays for various schools, and those could be like the essay from Yale that says write 500 words on anything you want, to a series of short answer questions where you have to answer questions that are 25 words long. That's all you get is 25 words, and everything in between. And then there are a number of state schools and art schools and conservatories that are not on the Common Application. So they have their own questions that have often nothing to do with the Common App question. So if you're applying to a range of schools, if you're applying to the University of California, you have 2 separate questions that are not on the Common App. The University of Wisconsin has its own application. So there's a huge variety of possible essays that students will have to write.
Okay, a couple of quick questions then. So if you're filling out the Common App and every college is going to see the same essay, Does it have to be that way, or can you choose to have different essays go to different schools? And if you could, would you want to?
I think the Common App allows 3 different versions of the essay. And I think that's the limit. You don't want to send 3 completely different, you don't want to be working on 3 completely different essays. I mean, from my perspective, it makes things simple or simpler if you get one good essay and you use that on the Common App essays, on the Common App part of this application. I mean, the kind of changes, you might want to make small changes in your Common App essay, but oftentimes when I work with a student, we get to a point where we both say, this is it. This essay is about as good as it's going to be, and we are both happy with it, and we can really feel that it achieved something. So if you want to then start messing with it, I guess you can, but there's so many other things that you have to do to write these essays. There's so many other supplementary essays you have to write that I try to keep kids kind of moving in the direction of writing all the other stuff that they have to write, rather than picking apart the Common App essay once it's done. That's my own feeling about it. Because I have kids who sometimes have to write 15 essays, depending on where they're applying. And the more particular the schools are, if you're applying to schools of engineering or computer science or any schools that are very specialized, even as undergraduates, you have to write different essays for those. And that adds up to a lot of different essays. Okay, so the Common App essay that we were just discussing is a relatively generic essay, so that it would apply to any and all schools? Is that... The essay comes from 5 different prompts. You have to choose from one of 5 different prompts, and prompts or topics. Back in the day, we would call them topics. Now the word is prompts. So the Common App organization proposes a group of essays. I guess they have a committee. The schools agree to them. And so students choose from one of 5 prompts. And they introduced a new group of prompts last year. And I think these prompts were so successful in eliciting really good essay topics and really good essays that they're using them again this year. So everybody will be writing from one of these 5 prompts. People can go on the Common App website, or you can just Google Common Application Essay Prompts 2014, and you'll get the list of prompts. I'm happy. I'll read you my favorite of them, and one that's very popular. Describe a place or environment where you are perfectly content. What do you do or experience there, and why is it meaningful to you? So that's an example of one of the prompts. Okay. A student can write about liking to go to the opera, loving to go to the opera. He or she can write about being in an airplane. He or she can write about loving to do math problems or be at a math competition. They can write about liking to swim across a lake. So it's very open-ended, and it really can tap into a lot of different kinds of experiences that are academic and non-academic and artistic, creative, political. It really covers a lot of territory, that particular prompt. The schools like these prompts. I mean, they because they see what interesting essays come out of them and how much they reveal about the students. Okay. So I guess another question would be, how important is the essay? And it sounds like, at least for many schools, they at least read them. Is that a fair statement? I think absolutely. I think this is one of the most well-read documents around. Yeah, no, I think the essays are very important. Let me give you one kind of example. A top student with top grades, top scores, all kinds of great extracurricular activities applying to a top school. They look at that student's essay to make sure that the essay is up to par with everything else. And if it's not, then that can knock the student out of the running. If they write a very dull essay, and I don't mean dull like they haven't had an interesting life, I mean dull in terms of language or in terms of the ideas expressed, that might knock them out of the running. What they're trying to see in the essays sometimes is whether the student is indeed as good as they appear to be by all the other measurements, or from among a group of very top students, they're trying to pick out students who would be most creative, most adventurous, most exhibit leadership, just different qualities that they can tell from these essays. Okay, so those are, let's say, the top students. Students who are not top, but who are very good students. You might have a good student who has, really lots of interesting activities, pretty good grades, pretty good scores, and has an essay that really shows him or her to be terrific. Really, they've done something fabulous. And I don't mean grand. I don't mean they have to run for president, but they've done something that sets them apart, that shows they have an interesting mind, that shows they have an interesting perspective on the world, that shows they're very observant. And so that will raise their profile in this sort of competition to get a place at a school. So a really good essay can make a good student look better. Those are the kinds of ways that an essay, can really be important. There are all kinds of essays. The essay about why you want to go to this school, even though it seems like it's a very boring essay, some schools really care about that essay because they want to accept students who want to come to their school. They don't want to accept thousands of students who are just pressing the send button. So they're really looking for answers that really show the student knows what this school is and has a real reason for wanting to be there.
Right. As I'm working with families, I think on a parallel with that is both the financial aid package and the acceptance has a lot to do with, the concept of demonstrating interest, which is,
exactly.
Have you demonstrated that you've explored the school thoroughly and you're still interested? Have you demonstrated that, it's high on your list instead of just a school that you put on the list because mom made you?
Right.
And
exactly.
Some of those types of things. So, and I would agree that essay might be one of the ways that you can demonstrate that.
For example, if you're writing an essay that says, why do you want to come to this school? I mean, if you're answering that question, and that's your first choice school, it's great to say that. X school is my first choice. I have visited 3 times. I went to summer school there. I have read the course catalog. I'm familiar with this professor, and I love the library and the student union and the swimming pool, So the essay is a place for you it's as though you're having a private conversation with the school.
And obviously, if that were on the Common App, you'd write one for each school for that particular.
Yeah, they have to be different. I mean, you can't just fill in the blanks there.
All right, so for the parents that are listening out there, what do you think the parents' role is in the essay process? And again, they shouldn't be writing the essays. We all probably realize that, but
right.
What should they do or shouldn't they do?
Well, this is very tricky. I mean, there's no one-size-fits-all answer here. It really depends on the relationship you have with your kids. Some people, and the relationships go from, my daughter and I, fight all the time, and I need to find somebody to help her do this because she won't listen to me, or we just can't talk about this. So that's one kind of relationship where, in that case, I think a parent has to find someone else, whether it's in the family or a friend or a teacher or somebody at the school or a consultant. But a parent has to realize that, or perhaps realizes that they're not the right person to help the student with these essays. And we'll get to other people who can help in a minute. So, and then there is a parent who called last summer who said, my son and I have a great relationship and I don't want to ruin it by working with him on the essays. And so would you help? So that's an example of another kind of relationship. And then there are the people somewhere in the middle who say, there are a lot of people who are writers in the United States now. We publish 200,000 books a year. So there are a lot of professional writers. And quite often, those are parents who are sometimes in a good position to help their kids with these essays because they write for a living and they know what good writing is. And the kids understand that. Now, sometimes it cuts the other way. They say, I don't want to work with my dad because he's an editor and he's just going to edit everything I do. So, I think parents have to accept and observe who their kid is in relation to having to do these essays and make decisions based on that. I mean, again, there isn't one size fits all. Kids when they're 17 years old they're not 12. They are on the verge of adulthood and they know their own minds. And even though they may not have the answers to everything, you can't push them around the way you can push around a 4-year-old. By push around, I mean that, in a playful way.
Right.
So they're on the verge of adulthood. So the parents really have to accept who they are and try to help them within that. And so they can help them by either helping them literally figure out what the essays are, going over them with the parents. They can find another adult who can help them, and that could be a neighbor. That could be a teacher at the school. I've talked to a lot of people who say, oh, yes, my neighbor is a writer, and she came over and helped my daughters with the essays when the time came. You don't have to pay somebody. There are programs, and some schools have very extensive programs in the college guidance office where they will help kids with essays. But some schools have very scanty programs for that. It really varies enormously. There are a number of public schools, and there may be a good number, where they get volunteers in from the community. So these may be low-income schools where people from the community will come and volunteer over a period of weeks and months to help kids with their essays. So there are programs where people don't have to pay anything and kids can get help.
Okay, so how much time do you think a student needs to budget, and at what point would that time be? Can we work on essays in our junior year? Is that too soon?
It's funny you mentioned that, because several people have called me already and asked that very question. I think junior year is too soon because, first of all, for a very practical reason, we're not sure what the essays are going to be because the essay topics could change. So you don't want to write an essay that is no longer useful. But also, if you write the essay when you're a junior, probably by the time you're a senior, you'll have a different idea because you will have had another whole year of life experience, and you'll probably come up with something else. So I don't at all recommend people write the essay in their junior year. But what I do recommend is that they spend junior year becoming better writers and readers so that when they do sit down to write these essays, it'll be easier for them. And a lot of, as we discussed before, they don't teach writing in school very much anymore. So when you have to sit down to write these essays, you're sometimes just stumped as to how to begin. I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. When I work with students, I give them a book called Sin and Syntax by Constance Hale that I think is a very funny, hip, interesting. If I say it's a grammar book, people won't like it. It's a writing book, but in the old days we'd call it a grammar book, but it's not a typical grammar book. And she really breaks down things into very small categories and really helps students focus on going from word to word. And I give this to the students I work with, and I just tell them to read, 10 pages, 20 pages, a chapter, whatever, and it just helps them write. And there's nothing magic about it. It's just, it just helps because they're shown examples of what good writing is. So I think people can very profitably be shown good writing in their junior years through good magazines. I suggest kids read the New Yorker magazine. I mean, when I grew up, probably when you grew up, there were magazines and newspapers in the house. And now that everybody has a tablet or a computer, there's not a lot of shared paper around, right? So you're not going to pick up your parents' subscription to the New Yorker because they're reading it online. So I think kids are missing a lot of writing that's good writing and interesting writing. So I sometimes suggest that families get the New Yorker magazine for their kid and talk to them every week about an article or two. And we do a lot of reading on the internet, but we might read about celebrity divorce, and I'm not sure that's going to help the writing.
Right. And I actually do some writing for the internet, and one of the rules about writing on the internet is you break some of the rules about writing on purpose, like short paragraphs and short sentences and easy to read, and a lot of things where if it's not going to be on the internet, you'd perhaps write it differently. and probably should write it differently.
Exactly. And so we kind of have this, it's very oversimplified.
Correct. All right, so when can we start writing then? As far as when typically are the prompts available that we're pretty sure that they're accurate and we can go ahead and get started?
Well, this past year, I think the Common App told us around, I think it was February or March, that they were using the same prompts that they used the year before. So we knew in February or March about these prompts. I generally don't, I start to work with people in around June for the upcoming application season. I don't encourage people to start writing too early, like when they're in their junior year, just because so many things happen to kids in a short period of time. They you grow up a lot in a month or two or three, and they may want to write something in February or March, and then by the time June and July comes along, or even August, they may have a very different perception about life, or something may have happened to them that's significant. So I don't encourage people to write this essay before, say, June of their junior year. Then the other essays, the supplementary essays, are not available usually until the summer before the fall of applications. So even if you wanted to start writing some of these other essays, they're not really available until the summer, maybe until July.
Okay. And then how much time would a typical student need to allocate? And again, I guess I think of parents saying, it's now April 1st and they're starting I guess there's two issues here. One is the kind of the nag season. Well, it's April, it's August, so now I have to start bothering them about their essays and force them to sit and write. So that's one issue.
Right.
But then the other issue is, well, how long should a student, say a conscientious student says, well, I'm not a procrastinator. I do want to get this done.
Okay.
And I need to schedule, 10 hours, 100 hours?
Unfortunately, there's no precise answer to this, but because it really depends on what school a student applies to and how many schools and how extensive the essays are. So I know that, it's a little bit like, how do you find a house? How do you buy a house? Well, you may have to look at 50 houses, or you may have to look at 2 until you find the one you like. I mean, you really don't know until you're in there. So one lesson here is to, if you're a conscientious parent, a conscientious family, to visit schools in 11th grade so that your kid has some ideas where he or she is interested in applying by the summer before the fall. Not everybody can do that, but that does make sense if you're trying to get ahead of the game, so that you at least have some sense before the summer starts. I've been working with students, I think, since the beginning of July. But I have been contacted by people starting in May, and they say, well, my kid is busy with 50,000 things, but he's going to be home from camp on July 2nd, so can you start the Common App then? So people start calling me earlier, but we don't usually start working until July. The Common App, I find, you can do that in 3 to 4 sessions over a period of 2 to 3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe, but 2 to 3 weeks if you meet, every 5 or 6 days. It usually doesn't have to drag on longer than that. And then the Common App is probably the thing you do first, because everybody knows what it is. And then I have people make a chart of the schools they want to go to, all of the essays that are required, and then we sort of do a triage of what essays come first, what are longest, what's the school the kid most wants to go to, how many essays are required. And there's just a lot of, it's I hate to say it, it's sort of like a part-time job, unfortunately. But you look at the list, you see when the applications are due. Kids today, as you know, are overscheduled. They work, from morning until night. Every weekend they do sports or they do activities. So they don't have a lot of time when they go back to school in the fall. So it's hard to make plans for the fall. So a lot of parents do want their kids to do as many essays as possible in the summer before they go back to school. At the same time, I work with kids all through the fall and into, the week before the whole applications are due in January. So some people want to apply places early. Early decision and early action applications are due November 1st. You don't want to start writing those essays in October. You want to start writing them closer to August than
Right.
October.
Right. So for those of you that aren't familiar, early decision, early action, there's a number of schools out there that allow you to apply early and be accepted or denied early. And theoretically, if you're accepted early, they're going to do the financial aid process early, and you might have it all done by Christmas, where most people don't have it all done till May. And there's benefits to that, and there's also a lot of drawbacks to that. So we will perhaps cover that on a question and answer sometime soon.
Maybe I'm repeating myself here, but there are just a lot of unknowns as far when you ask questions, because there's so many moving parts to this puzzle, and because there's such a huge variety among students as to what schools they're applying to and how demanding these essays are. And so I think the ultimate lesson is to start looking and doing research early so that you have an understanding of the complexity, and so it doesn't take you by surprise.
Right. So one of the things I tell people is if you have a student that's unique, you may have opportunities for scholarships. And one of the uniqueness examples that I give often is if your student is a good communicator. So if they're a good speaker, they have opportunities for scholarships along that route. Mm-hmm. If they're a good writer, they have a lot of opportunities for scholarships. From early on, they can do writing contests and short story contests and that kind of stuff. But they also, I think, naturally have a leg up for any type of scholarship just because they can communicate their case stronger than a student who's not a good writer. Mm-hmm. Have you helped people and had success in them writing at a high enough quality to win scholarships, and any pointers there?
I worked with a student last year. I worked with several students who had been nominated for scholarships at various schools. You know, I think once they submitted their application, or maybe their schools had nominated them for scholarships, and one of them got a totally full scholarship for 4 years. But it was through the school itself, and she was really an outstanding student.
So that was perhaps a secondary essay that she had to write beyond
she had to write 3 or 4 or 5 essays.
Additional essays. So she wrote a bunch of essays to be admitted on her normal application, and then the college came back and said, you have the opportunity for a full ride scholarship, so do some more.
Well, or her school. I think it was in this both cases, it was the high school that nominated both of these kids for a scholarship at a particular school. Like, say, the University of X has a scholarship. They go to the high schools and say, is one of the kids from your school who's applied to our college somebody that you would recommend for a scholarship? And then this sort of number of kids are invited to apply for the scholarship. Those are the kinds of scholarships I've worked on with kids, and they're very demanding. I mean, you have to write another, I can't remember, 3, 4, 5 essays, and they're, even if they're 150 words, 200 words, that's a lot of work.
Right, exactly. You need to, I guess the way I see it is it's not quantity that they're after, it's quality.
Oh, absolutely.
And every word counts, so to speak.
Absolutely. And sometimes the material, one of the great things about doing all these essays in terms of sometimes the essays that are required is once you've done a bunch of them, you can often reuse sections. You can reuse a paragraph from this essay and a paragraph from that essay. So it's not like you have to start over with everything. And also, by the time students get to this point, it's very late in the game, and they've already been writing so many essays that they really have gotten pretty good at it. So that's been my experience as far as the scholarships that you're talking about. Of course, there are merit scholarships and need-based scholarships all the time. And then I'm working with a parent who's given me some scholarship applications from different foundations that she wants her child to apply for. But those aren't due until January.
Right. I guess my point is there's a lot of people out there that say they would love to have a big scholarship. And then I always ask the second question, well, I realize you want a big scholarship, but do you want to do the work for a big scholarship? In a lot of cases, that work boils into some form of essay or application or all of the above?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, in my experience, kids have to do a lot of writing for these scholarships.
Well, great. So if people were interested in getting your help in the essay realm of whatever it is that they need to help with, what's the best way for them to contact you?
They can send me an email. My name is Elizabeth Benedict, but my name on email is Liz, L-I-Z, at don'tsweattheessay.com, all one word. So Liz at don'tsweattheessay.com, or they can phone me, and I will give you my phone number. It's 1-855-99-ESSAY, E-S-S-A-Y. You can just Google Don't Sweat the Essay, and my website should come right up.
It does, because I did that earlier today. Okay. Well, again, I appreciate your time and all the great information. If people have questions, they're certainly welcome to contact you. And
Yes.
all the information we just covered will be in the show notes.
Great.
And it will be at Taming the High Cost of College /20, because this is episode 20.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The latest tips, tricks, and tools you can use today. This is Brad Recommends on Taming the High Cost of College.
Today on Brad Recommends, I want to talk about building a team. In other words, I recommend that families build a team of people that are going to help with the college process. So who's on the team? Well, the two obvious choices are the parents and the student. So hopefully both parents can at least help in some fashion when it comes to dealing with college, whether the parents are still together or whether you're divorced. Hopefully you can work together to help your children figure out college. Then, of course, the student needs to have some skin in the game and participate and be active. After all, it is their life. And from a college perspective, most colleges like to see the student, definitely participating in planning and preparing for college. And then the third choice for many families is going to be the school counselor. Now, if you happen to be going to a college prep type school, often they have a dedicated counselor that's very focused on helping families figure out the college process and coaching the student through the application process. But there are school counselors out there, unfortunately, that are spread very thin. If you happen to go to a public high school, a lot of times these counselors have 300, 400, or 500 students in their charge, and they're doing the best they can. I mean, their goal is to help everybody, but the reality of a lot of these types of counselors is they have somebody in their office almost all the time, and whoever they happen to be working with is who they help. And if your student doesn't get in line and request help, it's easy for some kids to fall through the cracks because, again, the school counselor is working hard and doing the best they can, but with budget cuts at a lot of schools, the amount of work that they have to do is overwhelming. Not to mention that a lot of these school counselors, in addition to helping students figure out college, are also dealing with all kinds of other issues at the school, the drug use, the teen pregnancy, the students not getting along, dealing with students that are struggling to pass or get through high school, home issues with various students. So they have a lot on their plate. So that's the school counselor situation. But again, you still want to have the school counselor involved at whatever level you think is appropriate. Now, sometimes there's an interesting parent-student dynamic that makes things a little more difficult. I've had a lot of situations where, the typical student who's 16, 17, 18 is now spreading their wings and trying to become more independent from their parents. And so the parent-student dynamic often is a little challenging in that the student won't cooperate or listen to what the parents have to say merely because you're the parents. And for those parents out there, you may remember those days when you knew everything and your parents didn't know anything. And that's a normal part of growing up, and that happens in a lot more households than you may realize. So if that is a potential, then you also may need to work on how do we solve that problem. So some alternatives might be, well, you may have a family friend, a relative, say an aunt or uncle or brother or sister or somebody else involved, or perhaps you pull in a teacher in addition to the school counselors. So if your student has had a strong connection, with the drama instructor or the math instructors over the years, they may be able to ask for some additional help from a teacher, and often they're willing to step up and provide help as well. So that's kind of the core for a typical family. Now, in addition to that, you can also go out and find various advisors, and you may potentially pay them and hire some advisors. Or perhaps you already have some advisors you're already paying in other areas. So when it comes to college finances, your existing financial planner probably would participate or help in the financial side of paying for college. And also your CPA or your tax guy or someone that's helping advise, especially if you're a business owner, they may be able to participate as well. And then the last option when it comes to college finances is a financial advisor that has a college specialty. Now, the college specialist often is also a CPA or a financial planner or both, but he focuses on where the financial planning meets college. So they know a lot more about need-based aid and merit aid. They understand, saving and investing in 529s to a greater degree. So a specialist might be added to your team, or he might substitute for one of your other team members at some point. But a college specialist, for a lot of families, because they bring a layer of expertise that's not generally available from a typical financial planner or CPA, may be a good option. They often save more than they cost. I mean, that's one of the goals. Obviously, I am a college specialist. One of my goals, as I always tell people, my goals are to save you time, save you money, and reduce the overall stress. So again, a good college specialist probably can earn what they charge you and then some in college savings and planning and avoiding college mistakes. And then we have a lot of professionals that will help the student as well. There are counselors out there that specialize in helping students with their applications and their essays. There's career counselors that help students figure out what kind of majors or career paths they should be interested in. There's counselors out there that focus on helping you choose a college. And of course, some counselors may do one or more of or all of these different pieces as part of a package where they help you choose schools to apply to, then they help you apply, they help you choose careers. They walk you through software packages and other items to help expand your ability, expand your horizons and understand what may be a good fit. And then, of course, there's the ACT and or SAT testing experts who, through group classes or through individual one-on-one tutoring or a combination, may help you with the college testing. And then there's some ancillary experts as well. Linda Katz, in a previous episode, she's an expert in helping students with special needs find a good college. So if you're dealing with ADD or other autism spectrum or those types of things, there are specialists that can help you find colleges that would be a good fit for that type of student. So there's a lot of help out there. So part of the process, I think, is to figure out what areas you need help in and figure out where you can find someone that is able to help you, is affordable for your particular budget, and can meet your needs. And of course, you can, in a lot of these areas, many families will kind of do it yourself. In other words, the school visit and school selection process, perhaps you'll educate yourself by reading books or listening to podcasts or those types of things and kind of build your base knowledge. And I think most people need to do that anyway. It makes sense to learn what you can about the subject so that you can then decide if it's something you can handle or if it's something you want to hand off to an expert somehow. So there you have it. I think it's a great idea to think about building a team and kind of do it consciously. Most families end up with a team, but they didn't necessarily choose their team members up front. They just kind of fell together unwittingly as the emergencies arose. If you have any questions or comments and you would like to get a hold of us, you can go to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/questions, and you can input a question there and send it to us via Facebook or through the website, and we'd be happy to answer them on Facebook or here on the podcast as well as appropriate. We also appreciate it if you can give us a rating or review in iTunes. That helps us increase our ability to be found through the searches in iTunes, which is one of the primary podcasting platforms. We're also available on Stitcher if you chose to go that route. So that's all we have for today. I appreciate you listening. And again, if you ever have any feedback or need to get in contact with me, go to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com and you're able to get to us through that website. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.